Julius Caesar enters history at a moment when the Roman Republic is powerful, wealthy, and dangerously unstable. By the 1st century BCE, Rome rules the Mediterranean, but its political machinery, designed for a city-state, strains under the weight of empire. Elections are brutal, bribery is routine, and violence increasingly settles disputes that law once contained. Armies, once loyal to the Senate and people, have begun to attach themselves to individual commanders who can promise land, loot, and retirement. Caesar's life will not create these pressures, but it will reveal them with extraordinary clarity, and then force Rome across a threshold it cannot uncross. He is born in 100 BCE into the Julian clan, an old patrician family that claims descent from Venus through Aeneas and his son Iulus. The pedigree sounds grand. The reality is more modest. The Julii are respected but not dominant, and Caesar grows up watching Rome's elite compete for office and glory in a world where ancestry opens doors but does not guarantee power. His early years are marked by civil conflict, the rivalry between Marius and Sulla, and the bloody proscriptions that follow. Caesar is connected by family to Marius's faction, and when Sulla seizes control, the young Caesar is ordered to divorce his wife Cornelia, the daughter of a Marian ally. He refuses. It is an early sign of a trait that will define him, a willingness to wager everything on a principle, or on his own sense of destiny. Sulla relents, but Caesar learns what politics can cost. He leaves Rome for military service in the East, where he begins to build his reputation. One episode becomes legend. Captured by pirates in the Aegean, Caesar reportedly treats his captors with amused contempt, insisting they raise his ransom because he is worth more than they realized. When freed, he gathers ships, hunts the pirates down, and has them executed. After, it is said, ordering their throats cut first, as a gesture of mercy before crucifixion. Whether every detail is true matters less than what the story captures. Caesar's instinct to dominate any room he enters, and his belief that he can bend events to his will. Back in Rome, he advances through the cursus honorum, the ladder of public offices. He becomes known for sharp oratory, calculated generosity, and a flair for spectacle. As aedile, he stages lavish games that win popular support and bury him in debt. Debt that will later make him dependent on powerful allies. He cultivates the image of a champion of the people, without ever becoming a simple populist. Caesar is a patrician who understands mass politics, and he uses it as a weapon against rivals entrenched in the Senate. Two figures loom large in his rise: Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus. Pompey is Rome's most celebrated general, fresh from victories in the East. Crassus is its richest man, with influence built on money and networks. In 60 BCE, Caesar brokers an alliance between them, an informal political arrangement later called the First Triumvirate. It is not a constitutional office, it is a pact. Each man gets what he wants through the others. Caesar wins the consulship for 59 BCE and, crucially, a major provincial command afterward. Pompey secures land for his veterans and ratification of his eastern settlements. Crassus gains favorable financial policies. The Republic's institutions still stand, but power is increasingly exercised through personal deals backed by intimidation and patronage. Caesar's provincial command takes him to Gaul. What begins as a governorship becomes one of antiquity's defining military campaigns, the Gallic Wars, fought from 58 to 50 BCE. Caesar enters a landscape of shifting tribal alliances, rival aristocracies, and Roman anxieties about northern threats. He moves with speed and audacity, defeating the Helvetii, pushing back Germanic forces under Ariovistus, and then expanding Roman control through a series of campaigns that are as political as they are military. He builds bridges over the Rhine to demonstrate that Rome can strike across natural frontiers at will, then withdraws, leaving a message more than a garrison. He launches expeditions to Britain in 55 and 54 BCE, militarily limited but symbolically powerful, turning the ocean itself into a stage for Roman ambition. The Gallic Wars also show Caesar's ability to fuse violence with narrative. His Commentarii de Bello Gallico, written in a famously clear Latin style, present him as a rational commander restoring order. They are propaganda of a high order, calm, precise, and relentlessly self-justifying. Behind the prose lies staggering brutality. Entire communities are destroyed or enslaved. The scale of death and displacement is immense. Caesar's victories bring him wealth, battle-hardened legions, and a reputation that eclipses every living Roman. Gaul's climax arrives in 52 BCE with Vercingetorix, an Arvernian noble who forges an unprecedented coalition against Rome. For a moment, the Gallic resistance becomes a national movement. Caesar suffers setbacks, including a harsh reverse at Gergovia, but he responds with one of the most famous sieges in military history, Alesia. There, Vercingetorix retreats into a fortified hilltop stronghold. Caesar does something that seems almost impossible. He builds a ring of fortifications to trap the defenders, and then, anticipating a relief army, constructs a second ring facing outward. 2 walls, 2 battlefronts, and a Roman army caught between. When the Gallic relief force attacks, Caesar's lines bend and hold. Alesia ends with Vercingetorix surrendering, an image that will echo through centuries. The defeated leader laying down arms before the architect of Rome's expansion. While Caesar conquers, politics in Rome deteriorate. Crassus dies in 53 BCE during the disastrous Parthian campaign at Carrhae, removing a crucial balance within the triumvirate. Caesar's daughter Julia, Pompey's wife, and a personal bond between the two men, has already died in childbirth. The alliance frays into rivalry. The Senate, increasingly aligned with Pompey, fears Caesar's return. The core issue is not simply ambition, it is legal vulnerability. A Roman commander who lays down his imperium can be prosecuted. Caesar's enemies want him disarmed and exposed. Caesar wants to retain his command until he can secure another office and legal protection. Negotiations collapse into ultimatums. In January 49 BCE, Caesar reaches the small river Rubicon, the legal boundary of his province. To cross it with an army is to declare war on the state. The moment becomes a symbol of irreversible choice. Caesar crosses. Later tradition gives him the line, Alea iacta est, the die is cast. Whether he said those exact words is uncertain, but the meaning is unmistakable. The Republic's political crisis has become a military one. The civil war that follows is swift and astonishing. Pompey and many senators flee Italy, expecting to regroup in the east where they have resources and allies. Caesar moves fast, taking Rome without a fight, then turning west to secure Spain. The decisive confrontation comes in Greece at Pharsalus in 48 BCE. Pompey has the larger army and strong cavalry. Caesar's veterans are fewer but disciplined. Caesar anticipates Pompey's cavalry attack and uses an improvised fourth line to blunt it, turning Pompey's advantage into collapse. Pompey flees to Egypt, where he is murdered by courtiers seeking to curry favor with the victor. The gesture backfires. Caesar is reportedly appalled, not because Pompey was a saint, but because a Roman of Pompey's stature should not be butchered like a pawn. Caesar understands spectacle and legitimacy. He knows that power needs a story people can accept. Egypt draws him into a different kind of conflict. The Ptolemaic kingdom is wealthy, unstable, and entangled with Rome's finances. Caesar becomes involved in a dynastic struggle between the young Ptolemy XIII and his sister, Cleopatra VII. Cleopatra is not merely a romantic interlude. She is a political actor of rare intelligence. She meets Caesar while seeking to regain her throne, and together they defeat her rivals during the Alexandrian War. Caesar's time in Egypt produces one of history's most famous relationships, but it is also a strategic alliance. Cleopatra secures her position. Caesar secures influence in a crucial client kingdom and access to its resources. Cleopatra bears a son, Ptolemy XV, known as Caesarion, whom she presents as Caesar's child. Caesar never formally acknowledges him as an heir in Roman law, but the existence of the boy will later haunt Roman politics. Caesar returns to Rome as the unrivaled power and begins a sequence of campaigns to extinguish remaining opposition. Victory over Pharnaces of Pontus, summed up in the famous razor-edged boast, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Then hard fighting in North Africa against Cato's faction and in Spain against Pompey's sons. By 45 BCE, the civil war is effectively over. The Republic's old competitive equilibrium, multiple aristocrats contending within shared rules, has been shattered. One man now stands above all others. Caesar's dictatorship is the most contested part of his legacy because it sits at the hinge between republic and empire. He accumulates offices and honors, dictator repeatedly, then dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. His image appears on coinage in a way that alarms traditionalists. He receives unprecedented public distinctions. Yet he is not merely collecting titles. He governs with intense energy and a reformer's impatience. He expands the Senate, partly to dilute old aristocratic power, partly to integrate provincial elites. He reorganizes municipal government, resettles veterans, and undertakes public works. He grants citizenship more broadly and reshapes the Roman elite into something more imperial than Italian. Most enduringly, he reforms the calendar. The old Roman calendar had drifted badly out of sync with the solar year. Caesar, advised by the Alexandrian astronomer Sosigenes, introduces the Julian calendar in 46 BCE. Its structure, 365 days with a leap day every 4 years, will underpin Western timekeeping for more than 15 centuries. And even the later Gregorian reform is an adjustment of Caesar's system rather than a replacement. These reforms, however, come with a political cost. Caesar's speed and confidence can look like contempt for tradition. Senators who once saw themselves as the state's guardians increasingly feel reduced to an audience. Some fear monarchy in all but name. Rome has expelled kings centuries earlier, and rex remains a word of horror. Caesar's enemies interpret his honors as steps toward kingship. Caesar's supporters see necessary authority after chaos. Both are responding to the same reality. The Republic's old rules no longer match Rome's scale, and Caesar is rewriting them in real time. The conspiracy forms among senators who call themselves liberators. It includes men with personal grievances, men committed to Republican ideology, and men caught between the two. Marcus Junius Brutus is the most famous, partly because of his ancestry. His family is associated with the original overthrow of kings, and partly because Caesar has treated him with notable clemency. Gaius Cassius is a driving force, sharper and more openly resentful. They persuade themselves that killing Caesar will restore liberty. They underestimate how much the Republic has already changed, and how much Caesar's power rests not only on fear, but on loyalty, patronage, and the expectations of soldiers and crowds. On the Ides of March, March 15th, 44 BCE, Caesar goes to a Senate meeting at the theater of Pompey. He is stabbed 23 times. The assassination is intimate, frantic, and politically catastrophic. The conspirators expect applause. Instead, Rome reels. Caesar's death does not resurrect the Republic. It opens a vacuum. The aftermath reveals Caesar's most consequential legacy. He has created conditions for a new kind of rule. His adopted heir, Gaius Octavius, Octavian, later Augustus, moves with cold precision. Mark Antony, Caesar's ally and powerful consul, tries to claim the mantle. Cleopatra watches from Egypt, aware that Caesar's death threatens her security and her son's future. The struggle among Caesar's successors leads to more civil war, proscriptions, and mass killings. In the end, Octavian defeats Antony and Cleopatra and becomes Rome's first emperor in all but name. The Republic's language survives. Its reality does not. Caesar's impact is written into the vocabulary of power. His name becomes a title. Caesar evolves into Kaiser and Czar, a linguistic inheritance of imperial authority. His life becomes a template for ambition, reform, and the perils of concentrated power. He is remembered as a military genius who could combine engineering, logistics, and psychological insight, marching armies through inhospitable terrain, building fortifications at breathtaking speed, and reading opponents with unnerving accuracy. He is also remembered as a political innovator who understood that Rome's future lay beyond the narrow circle of old families, and who began, however violently, to integrate the provinces into the Roman project. Yet the moral ledger remains unsettled. The conquest of Gaul brings Rome wealth and security, but at a human cost that modern readers cannot ignore. His civil war ends one cycle of oligarchic dysfunction, but it normalizes the idea that armies can decide politics. His clemency is real. He repeatedly pardons enemies. Yet clemency can also be a form of domination, reminding the forgiven that their lives depend on his will. Even his assassination invites uncomfortable questions. Is tyrannicide a defense of liberty, or a failure of politics when compromise collapses? Modern relevance lies partly in that tension. Caesar's story is not merely the biography of a remarkable man. It is a study in how institutions break, how charisma and competence can accelerate change, and how reform and autocracy can travel together. He shows how a republic can be undone not by one villain, but by a long accumulation of inequality, militarization, and political paralysis, until a single figure becomes the solution that also ends the system. In the end, Julius Caesar remains both a person and a turning point. He writes with clarity, fights with brilliance, governs with urgency, and dies in a storm of steel that fails to stop the transformation he set in motion. After him, Rome still calls itself a republic for a time, still elects magistrates, still debates in the Senate, but the center of gravity has shifted. Power now belongs to those who can command armies, shape public narrative, and claim the authority to bring order. Caesar does not live to become Rome's first emperor. He does something more paradoxical. He makes the empire possible, and then leaves others to inherit the consequences.